Hello and welcome to today's video. It's actually a really exciting one because I have only been on booktube for about a year in January and I've never done like a final year reading stats video. So I thought it would be fun to kind of do that this year and take a look back, reflect on my reading, and I did also want to compare my stats to 2020 and see how it compares with my reading. When it comes to recording all the different books that I read, I personally use Storygraph. I love the little charts that they provide you with. If you have a Storygraph account, I'd love to become friends on Storygraph, so feel free. I'll include my link to my personal Storygraph down below. I feel like the last few videos I've been so bad about introducing myself, but hi, hello, welcome. My name is Kat, and yeah, this is my very first yearly end of year check-in. I have my iPad here because I definitely will need to reference this. But I didn't do a wrap up for October, November, December, and I don't think I'm going to. The past few weeks I've been feeling super burnt out. Not necessarily with YouTube, but just life in general. I feel like I need to take it a little bit slower, and the thought of having to put my notes together on all the books that I read the past few months just sounds like a very daunting task for me right now. So I thought that this would be a good way to kind of just let you know what books I did end up reading. I hope that that's okay. So it's still 2023 when I'm recording this, but I really don't think the numbers are going to change. I really doubt I'm going to finish another book by the time this video gets out to you. So we're just going to dive in, and if there's any changes, then you'll see it in the screenshots that I provide. But without further ado, let's just dive in and take a look at my 2023 reading stats. Okay, so first, let's start with a general overview of my reading this year. I ended up reading 57 books out of 60, and it's funny because I actually changed my reading goal because I had hit it. I think I had set it to either 50 or 55, but I cannot remember what my original goal was. But I hit it and I was like, let me just bump it up to 60. I can definitely hit 60. That was not the case. I did not expect the last few months of this year to be so rough on my reading, but I read 57 out of 60. Not a bad number. I am glad that I hit my first goal, so that's a success. I compared it to my reading last year, and last year I actually ended up reading 70 books, which when I looked back, I was like, there's no way. I've never read that many books in my life, but yeah, last year I read 70 books. And I cannot believe it. That's absolutely wild. Last year, I feel like that was when I really got back into reading. That was a really great reading year for me. This year, I did read a little bit less, and it makes sense. I feel like starting my booktube, learning how to edit, recording, planning, that definitely takes up some of my time on the weekends and after work. So it does make sense that I haven't been able to read as much, which is so ironic considering it's I started a booktube channel and now my reading has declined. I feel like if anything, it just gave me a new hobby on top of reading. Now I really enjoy making videos. That's really cool. So I'm not going to fault myself for reading less this year. All right, next is how many pages I ended up reading in 2023, and that was 15,508 pages. So it is down from last year, as to be expected. I read less books. Last year I read 19,503 pages. Okay, next, we're going to talk about my top 5 moods. Storygraph gives you a bunch in the chart, but I just wanted to focus in on the 5. So in 2023, my top 5 moods were reflective, emotional, dark, funny, sad. Which is funny because in 2022, my top 5 moods were reflective, emotional, funny, dark, sad. It's the same 5 moods, just kind of rearranged a little bit. All right, now for my reading pace. In 2023, 67% of my reading was medium, 19% was fast, and 14% was slow. And comparing that to 2022, 73% of my reading was medium and 16% was slow, 11% was fast. So what changed? Why? I'm looking at these numbers and it's not clicking. Okay, I read more faster paced books. So it's my fast and slow paced switched, which makes sense. I feel like a lot of the books I've been reading, I don't think that they've been super slow paced. but definitely medium pace. That makes sense to me. Okay, next, the page number range for the books that I've read. So in 2023, 60% of books were less than 300 pages, and 40% of books were between 300 and 499 pages. And comparing that to 2022, 57 books were less than 300 pages, and 43 of the books were between 300 and 499. That also makes sense to me. I feel like it only increased by a little bit, but I do think the books that I've been reading have been starting to be a little bit smaller. And next year, I'd really like to read some tinies because I don't think I read tinies enough. I feel like for the most part I read like medium-sized books. Okay, up next is the ratio of nonfiction to fiction. And this year I read 81% fiction, 19% nonfiction. And in 2022 I read 64% fiction and 36% nonfiction. So I definitely need to make sure I'm reading more nonfiction next year. I feel like it does kind of make sense this year I feel like a lot of the books that I wanted to read were for escapism, so it makes sense that I wasn't reading too much nonfiction. Next year I need to step up my game. I need to read more nonfiction. Yeah, because that's not great. I feel like last year it was closer to 50% than it was this year, so I need to work on that for sure. For my top genres of 2023, it was literary fiction, contemporary, LGBTQIA+, memoir, and graphic novel. So I think it's funny looking at this because I had read 11 memoirs this year. And if you watched my winter TBR, I think I said something like, I don't think I've read that many memoirs or something like that. But I definitely read a lot of memoirs this year. So I don't know where I got that statistic, but I kept up with my memoir pace. But in 2022, my top 5 genres were literary fiction, contemporary, LGBTQIA+, memoir, and essays. So for the most part, it was all the same, except I read more graphic novels this year, and last year I read more essays. So Storygraph has a formats statistic, but I do such a bad job at keeping track of what was a physical read, what was an audio read, what was an ebook read. So I'm not going to talk about that this year, but I think next year it'd be fun to kind of compare and see what my audio to physical or ebook ratio was. So I won't do it this year, but next year I'm going to be better about tracking that. And now for my most read authors. This year it was Brie Paulson and Akwaeke Emezi. I read 2 books by both of these authors. And last year, I had a few more authors than I read a lot of. So in 2022, my most read authors were Joan Didion, Brian Washington, Ottessa Moshfegh, and Tayari Jones. So all of those authors I actually read 2 books from. And I think for Brian Washington, I've only read one of his books, and it was a reread of Memorial. So this year, I did not have that many repeat authors. So I don't know, I thought that was kind of interesting. So that was just a general overview of my reading, all the stats that Storygraph provides. But now let's do a little dive into each of the months, and we can kind of talk about how many books I read and what books they were. I'm not going to really give descriptions of them. I'm just going to list them out because I don't really know how long this video is going to be, and I don't want it to be too long. All right, so for the month of January, I ended up reading 5 books. Luster by Raven Leilani, Butter, Honey, Pig Bread by Francesca Ikweazi, You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi, Nevada by Imogen Binney, and Writers and Lovers by Lily King. All right, moving on to February, I read 4 books in the month of February. Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin, The Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante, Fruit Punch by Kendra Allen, and and Fun Home by Alison Bechtel. All right, now we are jumping to March, and in March I ended up reading 6 books. Honey and Spice by Bolu Babulola, Good Talk by Mira Jacob, Bake Swiss by Jen Began, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, and The Sea by Hannah Porter. All right, let's move to April, which was one of my better reading months in the sense that I was able to just read more, and I did enjoy a lot of the books that I read this month. So the books are The Possession by Annie Ernaux, You Be Mother by Meg Mason, Patricia Wants to Cuddle by Samantha Allen, All Down Darkness Wide by Sean Hewitt. I think it's Hewitt. Fina by Nino Cipri, The Seas by Samantha Hunt, and The Friend by Sarah Nunes. All right, next up is May. And in May, I ended up reading 4 books: Woman Talking by Miriam Taves, Us Against You by Frederick Bachman, Big Friendship, How We Keep Each Other Close by Aminatou Sow and Anne Friedman, and The Glass Castle by Emily St. John Mandel. We're going into June. So in June, I also read 4 books: This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno, Bliss Montage by Ling Ma, Thieves by Lucy Bryan, and In Limbo by Deb J.J. Lee. All right. And then in July, I read 6 books. Those books were Claire and the Sun by Kashio Ishiguro, Old Enough by Haley Jacobson, Spinning by Tilly Walden, Open Throat by Henry Hoke, Greedy by Jen Winston, and Tomorrow Times 3 by Gabrielle Zevin. Now let's move into August. In the month of August, I only read 2 books, which makes sense because August was the month where I was in Mexico City for 2 weeks. So reading was just not really happening for me. But the books that I read in August were Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawakami and Really Good Actually by Monica Heisey. All right, so up next is September, and September was also a good reading month for me in the sense that I read 7 books: Homegoing by Ya Jessie, August Blue by Deborah Levy, Piranesi by Susanna Clark, Strong Female Character by Fern Brady, Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter, Assembly by Natasha Brown, and Squire by Nadia Shamas and Sarah Alfaji. All right, now we're jumping into the months that I just haven't caught you up on, so let's dive into October. In October, I ended up reading 6 books. Those books were What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez by Claire Jimenez, The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz, The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali, We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, Garlic and the Vampire by Brie Paulson, and Garlic and the Witch by Brie Paulson. Really cute series, by the way. Highly recommend. All right, so jumping into November, I feel like this month was really hard for me to focus. So this is kind of where my reading slows down a bit. And I know that there's just one more month, but I feel like October, November, December, it was hard to focus on reading. So in November, I ended up reading 5 books: Against the Loveless World by Susan Abel-Hawa, Maud Martha by Gwendolyn Brooks, The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez, Minor Detail by Danya Shibley, and Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Also, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, let me just say this real quick. That was such a good book for the headspace that I was in when I was reading it. I needed that book. I feel like it's a very repetitive book for sure, especially with how often the rules get repeated, but my brain needed that. Okay, so now let's dive into December. So in December, I read 1 book, and it was A Woman Is No Man by Ataf Rum. We'll see. Maybe when I'm editing this, I will have an update for you, and maybe I will have read another book, but as of right now, I don't see that happening. So yeah, those were all the books that I read in 2023, a total of 57 books, and as you can see, my months were pretty varied. It was either 4, 1, 7, 7 was the highest that I went. I did also want to do a final 2023 reading challenge check-in because I didn't do my wrap-up, so I didn't get to do a final check-in on that. So for the Shake Up Your Shelves challenge, I ended up completing 14 prompts out of 16, so that got me to 88%. I don't remember what the percentage was the last time I did a check-in. I feel like that's the latest because Strong Female Character and Homegoing are on this list, so I don't think that changed. And then for the 5 rereads challenge, that one for sure was at 0%, and I read 1 book, so 1 out of 5, which puts me at 20, and the reread that I ended up completing was Maud Martha by Gwendolyn Brooks. So I got on the board. I at least got on the board. I didn't complete it, but I got on the freaking board, so that's good. Okay, and then for the 10 books, 10 decades, I also can't remember where I was last time. Okay, I think I added 1 book. So I think last time I was at 3 prompts completed out of 10, and now I am at 4 prompts completed out of 10, so that puts me at 40%. And the book that I was able to add to this challenge was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Temple. by Shirley Jackson, and that book is from the 1960s, so I didn't complete it, but hey, I at least added 1. Okay, and then for the 12 books recommended by 12 friends, I think I actually did make a dent on this one. So I think last time we checked in, maybe I was at 2 or 3 prompts completed out of 12. I really can't remember. I should have double checked all of that, but I totally forgot. Okay, so the books that I ended up reading were Against the Loveless World by Susan ALLLL. That was recommended to me by Ivana. And The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. That was recommended to me by Andrea. The final book that I was able to add was The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. There was definitely an attempt there to get caught up, and I got 42% of the way through. So I completed 5 prompts out of 12. Not too bad. I wish I could have completed all of them, at least the Shake Up Your Shelves, because I was so close and I really thought I was going to get to it, but that's okay. I think maybe next year I'm going to chill with the reading challenges and just kind of read. We'll see. All right, and with that, that's a wrap on my 2023 reading. I would love to know like some of your reading stats, like what was your most read author, or some of your like top genres this year. Did it change much? Thanks so much for watching. This was so much fun to take a look back at 2023 and what my reading year looked like. I appreciate you for being here and for all the support that you've given me this past year. I can't believe it's been a year since I've been on BookTube and I've been posting consistently. That blows my mind, but thanks for being here. Again, I feel like I can't say it enough. I really appreciate it. My next video is going to be my favorite books of 2023, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you in the next one.